How are you? What's going on? Welcome into this week's episode. It's the Show Before the Show podcast, the official podcast of minor league baseball. Changing things up this week. Tyler Mon, Sam Dykstra, Benjamin Hill, fellas. How are you?
Good. This is our most NPR opening. I want to say just because the volume was at a manageable level.
From
Just a
minor league
nice,
baseball, I'm
easy.
Tyler Mon.
Yeah, and you're good enough, you're smart enough, and people like you.
Doggone it. People like me. We should do like an NPR themed podcast sometime. Well, we did sort of do that with this minor league life several years ago, where we did kind of an audio essay patterned episode of the Show Before the Show. Man, that was a fun one. It's always an experience. You never know what you're going to get week to week on the official podcast of minor league baseball. As we welcome you in, my name is Tyler Mon, and Sam Dykstra and Benjamin Hill are in New York City, and we are set to talk to you for the next, hour or so to distract you from the world at large, talk about fun things in minor league baseball, and solve as many problems as we can in your life.
Is that what we're doing? Are
Yeah,
we solving problems?
I think that's what it is. I think this is it's like a form of therapy, right? It's free for people.
Sure. Let's go with that.
We got a lot to get to on this week's episode of the Show Before the Show. Thanks for hanging out with us. You can, as always, get in touch, podcast at milb.com. And you're going to have a lot of thoughts on a topic that we have coming up here shortly. Now, you won't necessarily have to get in touch with us because you can engage with this topic yourselves. But we're going to get to that here in a little bit as we jump in with our first segment on this week's episode, Ben's Biz Banter, presented by Circle K, the official convenience store of minor league baseball, talking with our very own Benjamin Hill, who is back from the road. Ben got a chance to see a couple of, one new ballpark, one very refurbished, redone ballpark, Asheville, North Carolina, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Ben, take us through the last couple of stops. These are two classic minor league voyages that you got to make last week.
Yeah, I mean, last week I caught up with you guys in Asheville before I went to an Asheville tourist game. I remember talking about Nothing Night, and you can check out my story on the Louisville Bats Nothing Night, which is the first stop of my road trip on MILB and MLB.com. And so then there I was in Asheville after a long drive. And I hadn't been there for 8 years. And Tyler, like you mentioned, the Asheville Tourists are now in a new era. Their home of McCormick Field is now Home Trust Park, which, doesn't quite have the same ring to it, but the new name is tied in with, extensive renovations. I think it was a $40 million project is the number on it. And I was curious to see a ballpark that, dates back to 1924, hosting a team that at first utilized its name that it uses today in 1915, the Asheville Tourists. There's, of course, other eras of Asheville baseball going back to the 19th century. So there's just a lot of baseball history in Asheville and at this ballpark specifically. And I'd always loved that ballpark. And the question I get more than any other question in my career is like, what's your favorite ballpark? And through the years, I would often say, as one of the ones I would mention, McCormick Field in Nashville. So I was curious to see. I was a little wary. I knew the improvements were needed for, to meet MLB facility requirements and, for the team to really be able to thrive, for decades to come. So I was, obviously totally on board with the renovations, but, when you renovate a 102-year-old ballpark, it's also makes fans a little wary because you're like, you don't want to lose the timeless appeal that has made it special in the first place. And I would say no real worries on that front. It felt very much to me like the same Asheville tourist experience that I experienced a couple times in the past. Again, most recently in 2018. This ballpark is nestled in the hills. Make renovations difficult because the footprint of this ballpark, there's very little room to truly expand. But they did expand the main entrance area, which used to have like a road basically leading up to the main entrance. And they sort of nonsensically used to have the ticket booth past the entrance gates. So you'd have to like go through like the entrance gates and the security to actually get to the ticket booth. So, they cleaned that area up. A handy rule of thumb, if you're going to a tourist game and you're interested in what's new, is the structures that are black are new and the red brick exterior that has always been at that ballpark is old. And so when you get to the ballpark, get to the main entrance, up that little hill, it's on the first base side of the ballpark. There's a new team store, new ticket office, new entrance gate, and that's all new. Then you walk into the concourse. This is an old ballpark. We're not talking a 360-degree concourses. We're talking just a open space located behind the seating bowl, on the back end of the brick exterior. Um, and that has been expanded too, which was another great improvement because you need room to move in that concourse area. They put in a new history wall down on the third base side of the ball concourse, and that's a fun thing that I know a lot of the type of people who listen to this podcast, types of people like me, like to take some time and read up on all the long chapters of Asheville baseball history, and so many things to explore there. There's a new group area in left field that has a window to the batting cages and all like the player side stuff, which is obviously a big part of the renovations, is kind of most of it is down there nestled in left field in the left field corner. Those batting cages go into the clubhouse areas. The bullpens are around the corner and just beyond left field. But again, they didn't have much room to work with. Like to put in a new little picnic area on the first base side and to put in this club area down the left field line, they had to take away foul territory from an already very intimate ballpark. So there's like down the left field line, there's just a few feet of foul territory now with this new club area. And, as we mentioned about Asheville in the past, the dimensions stay the same because it is nestled in such a tight, hilly area. It's 373 feet to center field and 297 feet to right field. That hasn't changed. So you've got these unique dimensions. There is a video board for the first time. They used to have not a manual scoreboard, but one of the no frills digital scoreboards. It was just like the line score. So they still have that, but then on the left field side of the batter's eye, they actually have a new video board, which has never been the case in Asheville. The Tourists were actually the last team to ever get on MLB TV, because they operationally had had it difficult being in such an old ballpark. But it's a very small press box, as press boxes were at old ballparks. And they ended up not having room for the broadcaster. So the broadcaster is down near this left field club area, way down the left field line in the corner. It is pretty brutal for that. And Tyler, a broadcaster, he's mouthing something.
Yikes.
Maybe it was not fit for publication. Maybe good you were maybe good. And I was like, I was
Not
talking to
ideal.
Brian. Yeah, I was talking to Brian DeWine, the team owner, and he was like, yeah, I think they have to do a lot of it on TV. It's not. So you take the good with the bad. They're finally on MLB TV, but pretty rough scene to be calling a game buried down in the left field corner. And Tyler, when you start the Broadcasters Union,
we'll advocate for.
Yeah.
I was watching the Knicks Cavs game one last night. And I was explaining to my wife, like, remember when we were kids and you would watch an NBA game and it was just like the benches, a long scores table, one bench, long scores table, and another bench. Now you watch games in the NBA, especially, but even in college basketball, and it's like the bench, a ton of fans who are sitting directly adjacent to the bench, a tiny scores table, more fans, the other bench, and then on like the other side of the floor, it's like fans, a little broadcast spot, fans. I think at Madison Square Garden, I know at a lot of places in the NBA, they've kicked radio up to like the hockey press box, which is awful. And yeah, to do baseball, I've been at ballparks where you're doing games from down the line and all that, and it's not an enjoyable experience as a broadcaster, really.
Yeah. So that's not something that'll affect the fan experience of
Yeah.
seeing a game there, but had to point that out. But yeah, just being there, by and large, I was feeling less like, wow, I'm in this like new feeling place. It still feels like a very old ballpark in a good way. So it was nice to be there. I happened to be there on a Thursday, and we've hit on this before, but Asheville's the original home of Thirsty Thursday. They're somewhat legendary GM for decades in like the 80s, 90s into the early 2000s. Ron McKee, he came up with the term in the 80s, trademarked it in 1994. So the tourists, I don't know how heavily they enforce it, but they have given, at the very least, blanket approval to affiliated minor league teams to use it. So I was there for a Thirsty Thursday. They actually still have, they're small cups, but they actually still have dollar domestics. which you don't see in Thirsty Thursday context
Certainly
anymore.
not in New York City.
Yeah. So I was expecting a bit of a rowdier energy for Thirsty Thursday. It was a better crowd than I expected overall. I think I was expecting a little rowdier, but it was a lot of people and a good atmosphere, but fairly sedate in terms of like large groups of like over the top Thirsty Thursday enthusiasts as I've seen at some ballparks through the years. Although I did do an interview with some guys who were doing the 999 challenge and they were very enthusiastic fellows.
I was once on a bus in France and with other American tourists, and they pointed out to me, like they asked what I did because we had a while, and I said I work in minor league baseball. They're like, "Oh, we live in Jacksonville," and I'm like, "Oh yeah,
Okay.
Jacksonville, that's cool." And they're like, "Yeah, have you ever been to a Jumbo Shrimp game?" And at that point, no, I hadn't. And they're like, "Oh, they have Thirsty Thursdays there. You can imagine how much fun we have." And I'm like, "Yep, I'm sure you do."
I really thought you
So
were going to say
it's
you
gone
got on this
international.
bus and they were doing the 999 challenge on the bus. They had just like brought their own hot dogs. They're watching a game on their phones. That would have been cool.
I don't remember that part. It's possible. We were in Normandy for a while. That's where the bus was going. I don't know what
Okay.
happened to them after that, but anyway,
Yeah. Well, Asheville, the
that's
original
my
home.
aside
Yeah.
on Thirsty Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, it swept the nation, and in Asheville, they actually on Thirsty Thursday home games, they play as the Beer City Tourists now every single Thursday, a kind of alternate identity, referencing Asheville's, themselves as the home of Thirsty Thursday, but also Asheville's beer culture writ large. There are many, many breweries in Asheville, and so the Beer City Tourist pays tribute to that. There is a pretty good array of beer selections at the ballpark, although I was not as many like kind of real deep cuts as I was maybe expecting. I don't drink beer for multiple reasons when I'm covering a game, um, but yeah, you can branch out beyond dollar domestics or whatever if you wish. But the craft beers are only $3 on Thursdays, which is still pretty good. I'm not sure if you get the full size necessarily. Definitely the dollar ones are smaller cups, but still a good deal. Still good energy. They strive for a see the food cooked in front of you, state fair kind of kiosk vibe on the concourse. So the food they don't have a ton of like, whoa, what is this crazy Asheville specialty? Probably the most unique thing they have, and they've had this for years, is the deep fried moon pie. Moon pie being a southern staple, it's like a marshmallow sandwich essentially, like graham cracker and marshmallow and chocolate coated little pie, but they batter and deep fry theirs. So real calorie bomb of a dessert. It looked fantastic. So yeah, and then the Hub City Spartan Burgers won something like 18-4. When I was in town, the Taurus were like 16 games out of first place in mid-May. They had the latest home opener in all of minor league baseball, largely due to getting these renovations ready to go. So they had a little bit of a window, but yeah, the team's not doing too well. And then one of my favorite things about the ballpark in the past was not really the ballpark itself, but they're up the hill behind the ballpark, there's a like municipal athletic field. And it used to be that the bleachers of that athletic field, they loomed over McCormick Field, and you could climb to the top of the bleachers of this athletic field behind the tourist field, climb to the top and get this awesome aerial view of a tourist game. That I think it's called Memorial Stadium. That stadium that's right behind where the tourists play, they have heavily renovated as well. So it's probably a better thing for the community, turning into more of a open park layout instead of just like an old bowl for local athletics. But you can't get as high as a view from Memorial Stadium behind the ballpark to get those really good shots. But it's still worth climbing up there during a game or before a game or after a game, and because you can still see somewhat, although your view is now blocked by the new scoreboard and you can't climb all the way to the top. But anyway, it was good to be in Asheville. And yeah. And then I went from Asheville to Chattanooga, home of the Lookouts, another team that goes back to the 19th century. The first team named the Lookouts played in 1885. They've played in like 6 or 7 ballparks throughout their history. Most recently, AT&T Field from like 2000 through 2025. That was a pretty no-frills stadium in downtown, but at the top of a hill, kind of isolated in downtown, if that's possible to be in downtown and isolated. But that ballpark kind of was. This one is its own unique thing and what they're now calling the Foundries District. It's built on the site of a former Iron Works foundry, and I like this ballpark a lot. Erlanger Park, new home of the Chattanooga Lookouts, because they really took that industrial past and ran with it. There's like the powerhouse, big group area. I'm sure it'll be like a year-round event space and right field. That's a repurposed building from over 100 years ago that used to be part of the Ironworks foundry. There's a big pattern shop area down the right field line near the powerhouse, and that has like a bunch of relics from the ironworks. And in one of the original buildings, like the team store is on the lower level of that area, and they built it and they like kind of slid in some kind of like modular housing units within this old industrial space to make the new team store. So you have this really unique blend of old and new, and like a true like thoughtful repurposing of the old space as opposed to just tearing it down and building up something new. But really good sight lines, so much room to move, especially compared to where they used to play. And you can see Lookout Mountain, the mountain that they're named for, looming beyond the ballpark. Um,
So orientate us. Where
so if you're standing on the concourse in the outfield and you're looking behind the ballpark on like the first base side, kind of over the pattern shop group area slash old industrial building, then there's Lookout Mountain, and then there's some other hills and mountains kind of around there as well. So but yeah, you see that from the outfield side, and the team is owned by Hardball Capital, Jason Fryer, and he also owns Fort Wayne Tin Caps, and so there's some aspects from Fort Wayne that are now in Chattanooga, including a club area that is like literally inside the batter's eye, where they use
Yeah.
this like
Yeah.
cool like optical illusion. Where it was funny during one of the nights I was there, I was up on the highest level of the ballpark near the in the press box area, and I'm looking out while the game's played, and I can see from the press box into this club area in the batter's eye. You can see some of the tables and the people in it, but yet the players on the field just see a black wall. And so I don't know how they do that really, but yeah, we'll be talking to Jason Freer about, because I wanted to kind of learn more about some of the specifics of what they did to make this ballpark a reality. But also, like Fort Wayne, Erlanger Park is a public park during the day, and it's close to Chattanooga's Riverwalk, like a 16-mile stretch of running, biking, walking trails. So you can actually just go into the ballpark during the day, take laps around the concourse, incorporate it into your run. Because as
That's
everyone
also
knows,
like Fort
yeah,
Wayne.
I'm a runner now, so I need to know places to run.
That is true.
It's really important for me to keep inspiring people on my journey. And Yeah, it's good to see. I didn't run it at the ballpark. I did try to run along the Riverwalk, and my GPS couldn't find it. And I parked in a deserted parking lot and then went on this pretty sad run. But I found the Riverwalk eventually. And it's all about getting out there.
It
I don't let
is.
anything stop me.
That's a spot that I would definitely love to go check out, Chattanooga. I've driven through there, but I've not ever gotten to go to a Lookouts game. Didn't get to go to the old park, but man, I would love to spot that at some point in this minor league baseball life of ours. Maybe one day we'll do a little sojourn, the three of us, to go, you know, bounce Sam off of a bouncy horse thing, as though. It was the last time we were at a minor league baseball game. It turned into all kinds of tomfoolery during between
And I
inning
bring it up
contests.
every week in therapy, Tyler. I've never forgotten it to this day. You trust certain people in your life, and then they'll just blindside you
Yeah,
You're
then
not
they
wrong.
at your dizziest moments.
yeah, then they leave you for dead on the field in front of thousands of people.
And John Carlos
And
Stanton.
Giancarlo
And yeah, yeah,
Man, at least Marcus Stroman had left by that point. We only had one big leaguer that we had to make asses out of ourselves in front of.
yeah. But maybe we can do it in Chattanooga. And last thing I'll
Yeah,
say about Chattanooga is like there's still some iconic ballpark characters still there in this new ballpark. Wanda, the program lady, a woman who started working for the team in the 80s at their old home of Engel Stadium. She's now the programs are on QR codes, which is kind of lame, but she holds up QR codes. But she is just like the person at the gates for generations of Lookout fans,
that's
and
cool.
it's cool to catch up with her a little bit. They sell T-shirts at the team store that say "I'm just here for Miss Wanda." I mean, she's that much of a ballpark character. And Larry Ward is still calling games for the Lookouts. He started with the
Amazing.
team in the 80s. He is well into his 70s now after being with the team for 40 plus years. Always good to catch up with Larry. And I actually interviewed him about how he went viral last year with his call of a bizarre play in Chattanooga where he said "Holy cats."
Holy
So this,
cats.
yeah. So I'll try to feature that at some point. You know, once I get back from the road and I have another trip to plan and shore up immediately. It's like, there's so much stuff, and where do I begin? So I'm always a little like all over the place, but still processing that trip. It was a good time. Louisville, Asheville, Chattanooga, and stay tuned for a lot more, especially from Asheville and Chattanooga. And Asheville specifically, there will be an article on the ballpark in later this week, or probably coming out the day this podcast comes out, as usual. Keep on trucking.
Well, we are going to hear a little bit more from Chattanooga coming up here in just a little bit. But before we get to that, we have a new chapter in the minor league baseball on-site game realm. I'm struggling to figure out words to describe this. Okay, if you're a real MILB head, if you're a real dork who loves minor league baseball the way we do, you may remember several years ago, we used to do a very fun online competition at MILB.com called Miners Moniker Madness, in which we would have fans vote on their favorite names in minor league baseball. You know, names like Rian Spanger Furstenberg and Sicknarf Loopstock, and some fun names from across the world of minor league baseball.
Rock Shoulders.
Rock
Rock
Shoulders.
Shoulders.
Who could forget Rock
Yeah,
Shoulders?
great name.
Yeah. Or
That
Jorge Putang. That was a
we had
real
some
name.
good ones. We had some really
That
good
was
ones.
real.
You can go back and find Miners Moniker Madness stories and all kinds of stuff from those days. That has moved on. It ran its course. But we have a sort of new take on that, which is on the site right now, and it is minor league baseball's nickname knockout. And this is very cool. This is well, Sam, I'm going to let you give us the rundown sort of where this came from, because this is sort of a spun out new initiative that came from a story last year written by Ben Weinrib at MLB.com about the best nicknames in minor league baseball. Now we're putting them into a bracket format.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of, I think, a lot of people's favorite things to do is like go on Baseball Reference, right, and find out what somebody's nickname is. If you don't already know it, I mean, there are the history of nicknames in baseball goes back centuries at this point. I mean, Babe Ruth is a nickname, right? Like the idea of nicknames belonging in baseball, Big Papi with David Ortiz, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But also finding out, according to Baseball Reference, Cookie Monster is a nickname for David Ortiz. Who knew? But last year, Ben Weinrib put together a piece for the site, and he actually joined this podcast for an episode to talk about the best nicknames that
He was like in France or something like that.
that sounds right. I think we pulled him off vacation
Yeah.
to be on this show. But it was just going through and finding the best nicknames in all minor league baseball. But now Ben has again spearheaded this project to bring that back, but have fans vote on it. I mean, there's a lot of these that we've referenced constantly. There is a trade recently between the Cleveland Guardians and San Francisco Giants that involved Matt Wilkinson going from the Cleveland organization to the San Francisco organization. And within hours of that going down, I got a text from a friend, tell me about Tugboat. Because nicknames, they help tell a story about who a player is, but also tell us something about where they come from. Maybe the nickname is something they gave themselves and how they want the world to see them. Maybe it's something that goes back, like in Wilkinson's case, to his Little League days. Maybe it's something that teammates saw in them. So it's really fun, not only just to get to vote on these nicknames in a bracket style, which is what this is, but also just learning about it. I highly encourage, we're about to go through this ourselves, but I highly encourage everybody to go to the site, to MILB.com, and find the nickname knockout page and just scroll through it, because every time you vote, it's going to be a matchup between two names. You can find out not only the backstory, but you can hear the player tell the backstory themselves,
Yeah, that's the
which is
coolest
fun.
part.
So this is not stuff like, oh, we thought this was a fun name, and we're going to kind of pick it against their will. No, these are stories that these players are willing to share, and it's so much better in their telling than it would be in ours. So it's a really cool experience to go through all this. And with all that said, Tyler, do you have the bracket up? Because I want
I
you to.
sure do. So
Okay.
we've got it up as I mean, I have our first matchup on the screen right now.
So the way we're is there's three of us here. There's going to be a majority on every pick, right? We can talk it through, but we're majority. If we'll all vote and that pick moves on, and it's exactly like a bracket. We're just going to go through. We're going to come to our final two, and then we'll decide collectively what is the show before the show pick for nickname knockout. You might have a different one at home. That's great. Highly encourage you to participate. Voting ends at noon Eastern on May 29th. So you guys still have another week plus by the time this comes out to vote, and tell your friends to vote, and we'll see how the votes come in. But this is just how we feel. This is not definitive. This is not like we are not speaking on behalf of minor league baseball on who should win. This is just a podcast doing a podcast thing.
Yeah.
So Tyler, roll us with it. Hit us with the first matchup.
All right, boys. The first one, I mean, this feels like a 1 against a 16 seed. But it is, well, we'll go with I think the lower seed first. It's El Toro, who is Yasel Soler, a third baseman for the Hillsboro Hops in the Arizona Diamondbacks organization in High A. And he goes against the man himself with the nickname The Password, Justinson Garcia, now with the Indianapolis Indians in Pittsburgh in AAA. Fellas, your votes?
I mean, it has to be the password.
Yeah, it has to be
It's
the
gotta
password.
be the-
When
it's gotta
when
be
I
the
was in
password.
Louisville for nothing night, the password hit 3 home runs in that game.
That's pretty cool.
They were playing the Indianapolis, and he hit 3 homers.
That's pretty good.
I mean, that doesn't have anything to do with his nickname, but it's a great nickname.
It
The
is.
the Portland Sea Dogs, because he had been in the Boston organization, the password just gave away a password bobblehead, and on the base of the bobblehead, it has like a password you can enter, or where you kind of can click through different letters and
Oh, that's fun.
put in a password at the base of the bobblehead.
It's a good
And
way to
then-
keep it's a good way to save your password in
Yeah.
a secure analog format.
And just so anybody at home has never seen Joe Stinson's Garcia's first name spelt,
Yeah,
If-
I guess
if we
we
ever
sort
do
of
a
just
minor league
assumed
spelling
that
bee,
people knew that. Yeah.
he would be the first one. It is JHOSTYNXON, and that's why he's nicknamed the password. Pretty self-explanatory on that one.
We should
Yeah.
do a spelling bee. That's a good idea. Let's
You know who you could
minor
throw
league
in there
baseball spelling bee.
is just like some team names that sometimes they're two words, sometimes they're one word with
Yeah,
the second word capitalized in the middle there. We'll save that one, but that's a fun one to come back around.
yeah. Some city names.
Okay, our second matchup features Jose Rodriguez, pitcher for the Oklahoma City Comets and the Los Angeles Dodgers organization. His nickname is Tibu, which is short for tiburon, which is the Spanish word for shark. He and his brothers got that nickname from their father. It originally came when he was playing baseball in Mexico because his nose looks like the fin of a shark, according to the story at .com. He goes against El Espectaculo, Ernesto Martinez Jr., who is a first baseman in the Yankees organization. This one's tough, but your votes, fellas.
How are you feeling on this one, Ben?
Well, it might be a case of there just, some more backstory provided, but I like the shark and the idea that his nose somehow looks like a
A fin.
shark fin. Yeah, I mean that's a very unique facial characteristic. So
Very specific description too for a nose.
yeah, so
It is.
I'm gonna go with that.
I just imagine like if you were in a pool, you would be, on your back, but submerged and just
Yeah.
jaws like dipping your nose above the water. I'm actually going to vote for Ernesto Martinez El Espectaculo. Maybe that goes back to his time in the Brewers organization. And I know we ranked him in the top 30 very briefly because the guy hits the ball incredibly hard and he's huge. And just the amount of stories of people watching him hit the ball like 115, 116 miles an hour and just being wowed by that. I really like that as a nickname. That's kind of stuck with me since. But Tibu's very good. So it's 1-1, Tyler. Be the tiebreaker.
I think I'm going El Espectaculo. I love saying that, obviously. It's, Tibu is good. It's very good, but I don't know. There's something about being able to yell. Like if you're making a home run call in that circumstance and you get to yell out El Espectaculo, That's the dream.
Do you
So
know anything about yelling home run calls in Spanish,
no,
Tyler? Is this
nothing.
yeah,
Nothing at
no,
all.
of course.
Nothing at
Yeah.
all. Okay, so matchup number 3 now brings us to another good one. This is Slater DeBrune of the Charleston River Dogs, Tampa Bay single A affiliate. And his nickname is Lil, Lil, Lil Slay, because his name is Slater. Slayyyy is how this is put up here. And he goes against Diego Velasquez, the Richmond Flying Squirrels, double A for the San Francisco Giants, who is El Pollo, which is the chicken. Dudes, what do you got on this? Not my favorite matchup. What do you got on this one?
Can you give us the backstory on El Pollo? Because there's got to be something
Yeah,
with chicken.
I
His
don't.
face, his nose resembles a chicken beak.
He's actually just listed as one of the additional cool nicknames in the story from last year. But according to his explainer, it goes back to when he was a kid. He had lighter hair than everybody else, and so he said one of his cousins started to call him Little Chick. And then his family started calling him pollo, which is Spanish for chicken, or pio, which is the sound that little chicks make. So between Lil Slay and El Pollo.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a little Slay just
Okay.
because it's something that's gonna stick with you. Slater, I think it's pretty explanatory, and the fact that he didn't stop at one Y, did not stop at two Ys.
Yeah, there's three Ys there.
There's three Ys in there.
The
So I'll go
reason
little Slay.
behind that nickname is that in addition to being named Slater, he's also a music producer and an artist who goes by Lil Slay. He taught himself how to make beats, according to this story, through YouTube tutorials, and he writes and sings country songs. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, because that's when I hear an artist, oh, this is Lil Slay. I'm like,
Lil
I'm
Slay.
getting ready for some honky tonk action.
Definitely
Yeah,
country
Modern
beat.
country takes many shapes and forms.
that's true.
That
That's
is true. That is true. Ben, who you
Yeah,
going with there?
I'm gonna go with Slay as
Lil
well. I mean,
Slay. Yeah, I think we're
just
going
like
3-0 on that.
Slater sounds like such a straight ahead name, kind of sounds like a guy at the golf course sort of name.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it turns into Lil Slay with 3 Ys. It just subverts
3
your
Ys.
expectations. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. We've got a matchup of a pitcher against an outfielder, and it is Jay Slaviolette, outfielder in the Cleveland organization at High A with the Lake County Captains. His nickname is Lord Tubbington, which is tremendous. It came from his teammates at Texas A&M, who started calling him Tubby. And then he said, quote, somehow it gradually went to Lord Tubbington. He goes against Keegan, and I'm hoping that I am pronouncing this last name correctly because it's the same spelling, I believe, as a basketball player who I did broadcast for this year. Now, I would look at it and say Gillies, but that guy pronounced his last name Jill. So Gillies is Keegan's last name. Keegan goes by Big Nasty, and that's fine. He's 6'8", and his stuff is tremendous, so he gets called Big Nasty. But he also apparently uses that as his PlayStation username. Big Nasty with some numbers after it. I don't want to give them all. You can look it up if you want to go find Keegan on see if he'll match up with you on the show. But what are we going with Lord Tubbington and Big Nasty?
I think Lord Tubbington is going to be
it
a
has
clean
to be.
sweep on
Has
this
to
one.
be.
I mean,
has
that's
to be.
just a great one.
All right, easy one there. Okay, the next one, very good. Lou James Groover, third baseman in the Arizona organization who is with Reno at AAA. His nickname is Blade, which is so cool. He loved the movie Blade so much as a kid that he went by Blade and he used to dress up as Blade. He also has some other nicknames, including Don, Gino, Sweet Lou, G Squared, and GG. But his nickname is Blade. But he goes against El Mutante, the mutant. That's Leo DeVries, one of the top prospects in baseball, who is now in Midland and AA in the athletics organization in the Texas League. Who we got here? This is a tough one, man. This is like in March Madness. This is an 8-9.
I mean, this is legitimately stripped out of the isn't it not? I mean, it's like an X-Man against Blade.
Yeah, pretty much.
I voted for Blade because it just kind of caught me off. I know Leo DeVries is El Mutante, and that's very fun for the phenom that he is. But Blade, it was just like, oh man, that's such a good one, and not one I would have necessarily thought of for Lou James Groover. So I learned something about him, and if I were him, or if I were the Reno Aces, I'd be leaning into that and doing like
Blade Night.
Yeah,
see if Wesley
something.
Snipes will come out.
It has baseball connections.
Yeah, he does. That's true. Also, that movie came out in 1998. I would have guessed like 1994, 92. I wouldn't have figured Blade was that old. Ben, who you got? Or was that new, I should
Yeah,
say.
this is a tough one. And I'm whatever I'm gonna say is basically like a coin flip.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
that's the problem with this. This is like an 80 to 79 game on, March 29th in the tournament.
yeah, I'll go with Blade too.
Okay. I think we're going to make it a clean. Well, no, since you two have already voted and that obviously sends Blade through, I'm going to go procedurally. El Mutante is just too good to not have a vote. But Blade, you're moving on, Lou James Groover. Okay. So earlier we told you about the password, and now we get to tell you about the username. A guy who's also in the Boston Red Sox organization. Obviously, Justinson Garcia no longer in the Boston system, but that's where he got the nickname. This is Joan Fran Garcia, who's a catcher with Double A Portland in the Red Sox organization, and he goes by the username. Now, obviously, that is somewhat related to the password because the password is his older brother. So the younger of the Garcias gets to be the username, which is pretty great. He said fans came up with this because they asked for nicknames because the names in the family were kind of complicated and they didn't know how to say them. So he gets to be the username. And against the username this time around is Maxwell Romero, a catcher in the Nationals organization who is with Double A Harrisburg. And he goes by the Grinch. And this is phenomenal. It's because when he was a kid, he wanted to sleep in on Christmas. This is a guy I identify with so much. So his mom jokingly called him a Grinch and gave him Grinch-themed pajamas. So these days he wears a lot of green gear, including a Grinch bat and belt. This is another tough one, you guys. Who you got?
So when I initially did the bracket, I did the username because I think that's what sticks more. But I'm
Yeah.
actually going to flip my vote here and go for the Grinch,
Okay.
just because I love that backstory and the fact that it is stuck with him and it is something he really identifies. The username is just a product of the brother. It doesn't really identify.
Yeah.
Like
It's
when I hear
great.
the
It
username, I
is
know who
great.
it's going to be,
Right.
but it's framed through another person. The
Yeah.
Grinch, I mean, unless you think, the Grinch is real and another person, it is like original to Maxwell Romero Jr. So I'm going to go for the Grinch.
yeah, I'm gonna agree with you for basically more or less echoing you. As much as I like to be my own man with my own thoughts and opinions, I'm letting Sam speak for me on this one.
Okay. I like it. I'm going Maxwell Romero as well. Was the Grink there? I'm going with the Grinch. The Grinch is getting the vote. Okay, we're moving on to round 6 of 16 here in the opening round. We have Kevin Alcantara, the Chicago Cubs organization, and he goes with the Jaguar as the nickname. Very good, obviously, and you would be able to guess why because he's got power, he's got speed. He was given that nickname in Low A in the Cubs organization in Myrtle Beach in the early stages of his career, and he goes against the Postman, Jared Thomas, who is with the Hartford Yard Goats in the Colorado Rockies organization. And he was given that nickname by his hitting coach at High A Spokane last year, Trevor Burmeister, who said he's always delivering the barrel. So Jared Thomas gets the Postman. So the Postman against the Jaguar. Who you got? These are two in-career nicknames, and I kind of like that.
Yeah, I like the Postman. I'm gonna give my stamp of approval to that one.
And of course, it makes me think of Karl Malone. It's
Yeah,
like it's a different version of the mailman.
he's done. They're done with Karl Malone. The Postman is here now. The
The
mailman,
postman is here.
he's,
Jared
he's
Thomas
done.
is on the
We're
way.
not thinking about weirdo Karl Malone anymore.
Yeah, the Jaguar has always been very good, and I
It
honestly,
is good.
every time I hear Kevin Alcantara, I think of the Jaguar.
Yeah.
So this is another one where I voted for the Postman initially, but I think I'm going to flip it
Oh,
now.
you're
Just
flipping.
I think the Jaguar is iconic enough, so I'm gonna switch it to that. So Tyler, you break the tie.
I think I'm going with the Postman. It's a good enough. I like the reasoning behind Jaguar's phenomenal, but the Postman is like a little more unorthodox. I sort of like that it's not the mailman too. The Postman is like that's sort of kind of an alternative thought on this. So I'm going Postman. Okay. Going next to a matchup between Jonah Tong, the Syracuse Mets, the highly touted Mets right-hander. He is the Canadian Cannon, is Jonah Tong, which I feel like it would have fit a little bit better had he pitched in the World Baseball Classic, but neither here nor there. And he goes up against a guy named Boston Bateman, left-handed pitcher in the Orioles organization, whose nickname is Sasquatch. Now, the nickname for Boston Bateman is obviously because he's a big dude, 6'8", long hair. And he says that he has, quote, a lot of mannerisms that are like a Sasquatch. So his coach, when he was a freshman in high school, said he looks like a baby Bigfoot, which evolved into Bigfoot and then became Sasquatch. And he goes against Jonah Tong, and he actually got the nickname the Canadian Cannon from the Binghamton Baseball Booster Club when he was in Double A. These are pretty straightforward ones. What's the vote here?
Yeah, they are. With nothing held against Jonah Tong, I feel like this was just something they wanted to point out that he's Canadian,
Yeah.
and they wanted to rhyme it, or not rhyme it, but make it alliterative with Canadian. I don't necessarily think of him as a cannon. He's not exactly throwing like 101 in a way that I think you would need to do that. Now, his fastball can be very good because it's got elite ride at the top of the zone, but I don't think of him as a cannon necessarily. Whereas Sasquatch for Boston Bateman being all of 6'8" fits to a T. So I'm going to go Sasquatch.
Okay.
I'm with Sam. I'm
Okay.
just gonna get a pin that says that.
I will say I'm going to vote with you. I think for Jonah Tong, he's from Markham, Ontario. If it had been like a city specific, if he was like the Markham Mauler, I think I would have gone Jonah Tong. But like Canadian Cannon, it's good, but it's not Sasquatch good. Now that being said,
like Rocco Baldelli was always the Woonsocket Rocket.
yeah. Or we had a pitcher in the Pelicans organization who ended up making it on to the big leagues with the Pittsburgh Pirates and some other teams. Jeff Locke, a left-hander who is from a town I believe he was from New Hampshire, and he was known as the Conway Comet, I think was his nickname, because he was from Conway, New Hampshire, if I remember that correctly. But anyway, we're all going Sasquatch. I will say, though, for a name like Boston Bateman, you could have come up with a better nickname than Sasquatch. That's such a great real name. All right, you guys, this is going to be a clean sweep. We have the Wolf, who is Jose Corniel, a right-handed pitcher in the Arizona Complex League with the Texas Rangers, and he goes against Peyton Williams, first baseman for the Vancouver Canadians in the Toronto organization, whose nickname is the Iowa Meat Truck. 6'5", 255, and he came to practice day once with a t-shirt for his neighbor's company called the Iowa Meat Truck. He's from Des Moines. And that's now his nickname. He also has a home run celebration where he pretends to honk a horn like a semi driver. I mean, the Wolf is a very cool nickname, but like, what is going to beat the Iowa Meat Truck?
Yeah, nothing. I mean,
Nothing.
nothing in this round. I don't want to spoil anything moving forward. But
Yeah.
the Iowa Meat Truck, classic of the genre.
All right. Moving on quickly. Tommy White, third baseman in the A's system with AAA Las Vegas, goes by Tommy Tanks, but he goes against another good one, a guy who's been in the big leagues a lot in recent years, formerly with Cleveland, now in the Baltimore system. Jhonkensy Noel, Big Christmas.
Big Christmas for me. I mean, that's easily identifiable. Anytime he ever did anything for Cleveland when he was playing there for a while, went on the waiver wire for a bit, but has landed in Baltimore. If he hit a massive home run, which is something you could do, all of social media would light up with Big Christmas.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to call this guy Big Christmas. Everybody wants to see this guy succeed because his nickname is Big Christmas. So
Yeah, let's see him go up against the Grinch.
Yeah, how about that? That'd be cool. It's a battle for the soul of the holiday season. Okay, we move on to two other guys who are size-based nicknames. Another Big kicks off one of them. Zach Maxwell, right-hander in the Red system, who's with AAA Louisville. He goes by Big Sugar, does Zach Maxwell. And he's going to go against Nick Merkel, who is with the Biloxi Shuckers AA in the Brewers organization, who is the Large Mammal. Big Sugar got the nickname because he was once referred to on a broadcast as a big hunk of sugar as he walked off the mound. And for the Large Mammal, it's because he's a large mammal. 6'7", 255 for Nick Merkel. And he got that nickname also from a broadcaster during his freshman year in college. Each of these guys have the nickname stitched onto their gloves. What are you guys going with?
I think Big Sugar is just so descriptive. And it can be shortened, which is something that it says here in the nickname backstory, the
Yeah,
Big Shug.
Big Shug.
Big Shug is good on its own. But there's a few variations here. I'm going Big Sugar.
These are both great, but I'm going large mammal because
Oh
it's
no.
funny.
It is funny. It is very
It's
unique.
funny.
Oh man,
It's
this is
not
on
like,
me now.
a specific animal like the other animal ones are. The large mammal gives it a sense of absurdity around it.
Yeah, I
And what are we all but large mammals when you really think about it?
and some of us larger than others. When you're six, what did we say for Nick? 6'7", 255. I think I'm going large mammal also because I feel like these both came from broadcasters, and I feel like I would be more likely to just awkwardly stumble into calling someone a large mammal rather than like come up with a little better package nickname like Big Sugar or Big Cube of Sugar. What was it? Big Hunk of Sugar. I think I'm going large mammal, Nick. So you're moving on. Okay. To AAA Toledo we go in the Tigers system. Max Clark, known as Spark, and then Brian Palencia, who is in the Giant system with High A Eugene, El Cirujano. Now that means the surgeon in Spanish. He was given that nickname by teammates and coaches in the Dominican Summer League because he was carving up batters so efficiently in the closer's role. So El Cirujano or Spark?
El Cirujano
Yeah,
is
for sure.
delightful. It's so
For sure.
descriptive. It works great for a pitcher. It makes everybody, all the English speakers in the audience, learn what surgeon is in Spanish. And once you know that, you're not going to forget it. El Cirujano.
Yep, correct. Max Clark is great. I like Max Clark,
I don't think of Spark
but
for
I
him.
don't think of him as
Yeah,
Spark. And
yeah,
he's already got enough shine and mojo and style and vibes. Like, let's just go with a unique
yeah.
nickname.
I'm with you. All right. Then we go to another one that is going to be looming large in this battle, and that is a guy who did pitch in the World Baseball Classic and has become kind of a minor league baseball legend already in his career. Now with Double A Richmond and the Giants organization, Matt Wilkinson, the left-hander who is known as Tugboat because he is a big fella. He actually got that nickname during a run to the Little League World Series back when he was a kid because one of his coaches, one of his friends' dads, said that he ran like a tugboat. Like he was designed mostly just to pull people. He wasn't really designed for speed. He was more designed for pop. But he goes against another really good one. Shortstop in the Rangers organization, Sebastian Walcott, who goes by La Movie. Teammates in the Ranger system started calling him that because after he stole home once, they said he stood up like he was a superhero in a movie. So Tugboat against La Movie.
I feel bad for Sebastian
Me
Walcott
too. This is such a
for
tough
being
draw.
here.
Yeah.
Anybody here was going to be in a
Yeah.
very tough position, but Tugboat is, I'd said before, a classic of the genre. This is the example in the
Yeah.
minor league.
Yep, I'm the same way. Sebastian Walcott deserves better,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Sorry,
have to go
Sebastian.
with.
A different year, a different draw. I think you make a deep run, but this year bounced in the first round. It's one of those tough ones, one of those tough assignments. Okay, matchup number 13 of 16 here in the first round is Davison de los Santos, who is with the Marlins organization with AAA Jacksonville. He goes by El Animal, the animal, which goes back to when he was a kid. He said, quote, "My dad gave me that nickname because I was a chubby kid and looked like a gorilla, which was my favorite animal. So he got to be El Animal." And he goes against Hagen Danner, right-handed pitcher in the Red system with AAA Louisville, who is known as the Ice Cream Man. He was a second-round pick of the Blue Jays in 2017. And when he was drafted, they thought that his name sounded like Haagen-Dazs, so they called him the Ice Cream Man. So the Ice Cream Man against El Animal.
The Ice Cream Man is so good.
It is
Yeah,
really
I'm going
good.
with that one. And I was bringing this up in the office yesterday, but Haagen-Dazs does not mean anything.
I've heard that before.
The makers of that ice cream just chose those combination of sounds because
Yeah,
it
it's
kind
just
of
a
just
German
sounded
sounding name.
classy and foreign and high quality.
Yeah.
So I like that those nonsense words are inspiring nicknames.
Sam, you going Ice
Oh,
Cream
I'm
Man?
Ice Cream Man. Yeah,
Okay.
no.
Just because of the cuteness of the story, I'm going with El Animal, but the Ice Cream Man moves on. So we get to two more good ones. A lot of these are sort of, I feel like there was a legend established with the nickname The Martian for Jason Dominguez that a lot of nicknames have kind of flowed from. This one sort of feels that way as well. Now, I don't think this is directly derivative from that, but Yorger Bautista, who is an outfielder in the Mariners system, he goes by La Bestia, the Beast. He was a pitcher until age 13 when he started hitting, and he had a batting practice that was so good that his trainer said that he hit the ball like a beast. So the beast stuck, La Bestia. But he goes against Walker Jenkins, who is in the Twins organization. And when Walker Jenkins was a member of a USA Baseball squad, Twins legend Michael Kadire, who's done a lot of coaching with USA Baseball, nicknamed Walker Jenkins Captain America, which is, I mean, that's a high bar to reach. But he thought that Walker Jenkins looked like Chris Evans, who played the Marvel superhero and had some good leadership characteristics. So La Bestia against Captain America.
I have heard both of these. I know Captain America has certainly stuck with Walker Jenkins and has been kind of apocryphal ever since Kadire gave him that nickname. But I go back to Spring Breakout, in which Jim Callis was calling a matchup for the Seattle Mariners in Arizona for Spring Breakout, and Batista hit maybe the longest homer of Spring Breakout this year. And he was slacking a few of us on the side and just saying, you have to see La Bestia's homer. And I kind of in that vein of, like you were saying with The Martian, like it sets up expectations that might be impossible to meet. Captain America kind of does that too, but it does stick. So I'm going to La Bestia for me.
I'm going Captain America.
Oh, okay.
I just like it's just a good nickname. Look, to me, it sounds a bit like an insult. Like I feel like if I was calling one of my friends Captain America, it'd be kind of like
You're squeaky.
yeah.
All
Look
right,
at, all right,
Captain
let's see
America.
what Captain America over there wants to do.
Man, this is a
You
tough
know,
swing vote. But I think here is my I think that Walker Jenkins can seize on that nickname if and when someday he plays for the US in the World Baseball Classic. Because to me, when I think of Captain America, I think of David Wright, I think of Mike Trout, I think of Aaron Judge, I think of these guys who have been the captains of those USA baseball squads, unofficially or officially. So I feel like Captain America, like there are a lot of guys who kind of stake claim to that. So I think I got to go to La Bestia. Now, that being said, if Walker Jenkins is on a WBC roster in a few years and turns into, an international baseball legend, that nickname, it will have been a predictive sort of successful nickname, but I think it's Yorger Bautista who's moving on here. All right, now we go to our penultimate, as Ben would say, matchup of this first round. The Phoenix, Felnin Celestin, who is a shortstop in the Mariners organization at High A. That's a great one. The Phoenix. They like the metaphor this is a nickname picked by Celestin and his agent. They like the metaphor of, kind of growing through your failures. So the Phoenix, but he goes against a good one in Big Papa, Ruben Ibarra, who's with the Chattanooga Lookouts in Double-A in the Red system, 6'3", 290, who walks up to the notorious B.I.G.'s Big Papa as his walk-up song. This was actually a nickname that he got in middle school after basketball practice, but he got Big Papa as a nickname.
I'm going to choose the Phoenix, but one
Okay.
thing we should point about the Phoenix is that it's spelled Fenix.
It's the
So it
Spanish
starts,
spelling, yeah, but it's the same meaning, but yeah, the Spanish spelling.
yeah, and Feldon Celestin's first name starts with Fe. So it's like it works exceptionally well
Yeah.
there. And it tells a story that I think, he has had an up and down career, very much up right now. He's been tremendous forever to start the year. Big Papa, a little too close to Big Poppy for me, but I do like the Biggie Smalls connection there too. But it's the Phoenix gets my vote.
yeah, it's a tough one because I was just in Chattanooga and I saw that Ruben Ibarra was a fan favorite, and I heard the Biggie walk up song, and yeah, so I started to like the guy. But I think the Phoenix is a better nickname. And my first car ever in high school was a 1981 Pontiac Phoenix, so I was always a guy
Cool.
who referenced Phoenixes a lot and was very proud of my own Phoenix back in the day.
I'm looking up a 1981 Pontiac Phoenix right now. Oh, okay.
It's
A
a
little
clunk.
two-door?
Yeah, no, it was a four door.
Oh, you had the four-door. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, I mean I don't think the Phoenix made much of a dent in like American car culture, but yeah, my great aunt had one and she died, and then my grandparents had it, and then I got a license and I inherited a 1981 Pontiac Phoenix, and big part of my story, but this isn't about me.
All right, Felnin, you're moving on as the Phoenix gets our. I'm voting Big Papa just to give him one because it's good, but Celestine is moving on. Oh wait, I guess that was number 16. Okay, so that was our final matchup. So now we move on to round number 2,
We'll go a little bit quicker on
and
these.
we will
We
because now
are
we've gone through the
we've
backstories of
gone
all
all
these.
through the backstories. It can be pretty quick on
All
that.
right,
Yeah, we could continue it. Uh, I don't know.
Go ahead, Tyler.
the password against El Espectaculo.
The passwords.
Password.
Moving on.
It's got to be the password. All right, that's quarterfinal round number 1. Lil Slay against Lord Tubbington.
Lord Tubbington.
Tubbington.
It's got to be Tubbington. Blade against the Grinch.
Oh man,
The Grinch. I'm going Grinch.
I'm going Blade still. I really like
Oh
Blade.
man,
James
don't put
Weaver.
it on me. I think I'm going Blade also. I love the Grinch. I love that story, but Blade is like a very cool. As a professional athlete, there are not as many nicknames that would inspire like. There's so much of a cool aura around the nickname Blade. All right, the Postman against Sasquatch.
Sasquatch.
Sasquatch as well. Yeah.
Oh wow, I was gonna go the Postman. Okay, we're going Sasquatch. Boston Bateman. Moving on. The Iowa Meat Truck against Big Christmas.
Oh,
Ooh,
no, a big Christmas
tough one.
is such a good
I
one, but Iowa
know.
Meat Truck, I think the more people get exposed to Iowa Meat Truck, the more
Yeah,
popular it's going to be.
that's
Yeah,
like
I got to go there.
the Iowa Meat Truck has the chance to be like an all-time great sports nickname. If Peyton Williams becomes like a regular big league contributor, that's like I don't know how many. That's like when you look back on the history of baseball nicknames, that's tough to beat.
But if you told me that was the final, I wouldn't have argued with you either.
Yeah, that's
Big
true.
Christmas is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's true too. Okay, the large mammal against the surgeon El Cirujano.
Oof. Large mammal. I like the absurdity of that one.
I'd still stick with Cirujano.
Yeah, I think I'm going surgeon. I like the surgeon. The large mammal is great, but El Cirujano is like the nickname itself as the surgeon is a good nickname, but being able to say it in Spanish just feels like even more. There's more mystique to it. All right, this one not a fun one because it pits two greats. We got Tugboat against the Ice Cream Man.
It's Tugboat.
Yeah,
It's
I
gotta
gotta
be
go with
Tugboat.
Tugboat.
I got a feeling I know what the final is going to be already.
Like
Um,
I think a day might come where Matt Wilkinson's player page just turns into
just
Tugboat.
turns into
Wilkins.
Tugboat. Yeah, it's true. All right, La Bestia against the Phoenix, which kind of makes me wonder why isn't it La Phoenix if it's Spanish
Or El
El
Phoenix.
Phoenix or El Phoenix? I don't know which article it would take, but anyway,
Either
Phoenix
way,
against La Bestia.
I'm a Phoenix guy, as previously stated.
You're going
I
Phoenix.
like Bestia.
I think I'm going Phoenix.
You.
I do like Phoenix. I love La Bestia and I like the story a little bit better, but the Phoenix is like a very cool. I do love that as a nickname. Okay, we're down to our final four, or our final four picks, I should say, and it is the password against Lord Tubbington to kick things off.
Password. Lord Tubbington is great. It's phenomenal. It requires so much explanation. Password is iconic.
True,
It
but I'm gonna go
is.
Lord Tubbington. It's just so
Oh,
absurd.
man. This is tough. This is a tough one. I think in any other matchup, I'm going Lord Tubbington, but I don't know how you can defeat the password. Like that's one of the ones that the first time I heard it, I was like, oh, that is a brilliant nickname. So I think I'm going with the password. Sorry, Lord Tubbington. You gave it a great run, Jace Laviolette, but that's tough. All right, Blade against Sasquatch.
Blade.
Tyler, you go.
I'm going Blade.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
I think
I was leaning Sasquatch. So
again,
at
if
least
his
it's
name
close.
was like Kyle Bateman, like yeah, sure. But his name is Boston Bateman. There are so many good nicknames I feel like you could come at. Now, granted, he is an Orioles prospect. It'd be cooler if he was a Red Sox prospect. But like Sasquatch, good nickname, but I feel like we can do better for Boston Bateman. That's a great name. Boss Bait. Not that. Okay, we're going Blade. We're going Blade. Now we got the Iowa Meat Truck against El Cirujano.
I'm sorry, Cirujano. This is where
Yeah.
the road ends. It's
Yeah.
Iowa Meat Truck.
It
Yeah, I
ends
hate to
at
do
the
it.
Iowa Meat Truck. Yeah, it's a tough one to go against. Tugboat against the Phoenix.
Oof.
Tugboat.
I guess so, even though I was really
Yeah,
hyping up
I
Phoenix.
gotta go tugboat too.
Yeah.
I
Some
do
hard
also,
decisions have to be made in these rounds, folks.
man, and our final four is gonna pit. God, none of these are easy. All right, the password against Blade is matchup number one, which means we all know what semifinal number two is. But what are we going with the password against Blade?
Uh,
That password.
Yeah,
Blade has kind of
yeah,
been a little bit of a Cinderella, but
yeah.
password
Blade
is
has been. Blade's like that 13 seed that's like, damn, this team could make the final four. This team's in the final four. Sorry, it's like
and then at some point
George
you run into
Mason.
Duke or
Yeah,
UConn or
exactly.
Kentucky. Like
Yeah,
it
yeah.
happens.
You're Loyola Chicago. Amazing story, but like we didn't expect you to win a natty. All right, we're all going with the password there. All right, here we go. It is the matchup of all this is the Spurs Thunder of our final. I don't know why it's all basketball metaphors, but like the winner of the. Well, I don't know. I shouldn't say that because the password is into the final, and that's a great one. But this is like two literal and figurative heavyweights. The Iowa meat truck against tugboat.
I,
Iowa meat truck.
you're gonna have to break a tie here again, Tyler.
Oh
I'm sticking with
man,
tugboat. I think it's Iowa meat truck is terrific, and you could
it
sell a
is.
million shirts. And
And
um,
hopefully the Jays will.
hopefully the Jays will. Hopefully Vancouver is doing something. Hopefully just the state of Iowa is about to sell. Like that company that originally had Iowa meat truck is sold out of shirts and has to consistently order new ones. But tugboat is concise. It's
Yeah,
easy to say. You say it, you know exactly who you're talking about. Again,
yeah.
I've had people outside of baseball reach out to me about that specific nickname. I'm going tugboat.
I think, and this may just be due to the description on MLB.com not going into the complete detail, but it says that Peyton Williams came to practice day with a T-shirt for his neighbor's company, the Iowa Meat Truck. And as I read that, I read it as he came to practice day, like, before the start to Vancouver's season. And that's where he got the nickname. For tugboat, that came all the way back during the Little League World Series. And that to me is like your friend's dad gave it to you. It's also like kind of an adorable nickname. Tugboat. I think I gotta go tugboat. I'm sorry to the Iowa meat truck. Again, this is like a dude who, he went 32-1 in the regular season and he gets bounced in the final four, and that's tough. It might have been his best chance at a title ever, but I think tugboat is it's too good. It's too good. And it's a little bit longer lasting than the Iowa meat truck. So I'm going tugboat, which brings us to our final, and that is the password against tugboat. I do feel like we got to, like, this is two number one seeds. This is like the number
Yeah,
one overall and the other team that had an argument to be the number one overall.
it is chalky, but chalky in a celebratory way
Yeah, chalky's not
because
bad. You're
because
seeing the
these are
best at the
fun.
end,
Yeah,
Blade had his Cinderella run. He made it, the final four. But the password against tugboat. This is tough. This is a tough one.
I think I'm going to go with the password.
Okay.
I'm gonna go tugboat.
Each of them are
Man.
iconic.
Oh man. Oh man. This is on me now. Um I was going to decide this based on the fact that Justinson Garcia has already been in the big leagues. And I was going to be like, well, we're sticking with the guy he's the minor league guy in tugboat. He hasn't made it yet, but Justinson Garcia has only played 6 games in the big leagues.
Just got
Um,
back up this week
he
to the
did. He
Pirates.
did. Oh man, I don't know if I can pick. How about this? Should we turn this to a vote? Should we turn this to? Well, no, because you can all
we
go.
are turning this to a vote. This is
Well, yeah, it
literally what
is.
this
It's
bracket is
our.
doing.
But I was gonna say, should we put our final out there for the masses? But the problem is, then they're not gonna go through and do their own voting.
Yeah.
Um,
Make a decision, Mon.
I
Come on
gotta.
now.
I think I gotta go with the password. It's just like tugboat is so good, but the password is one of those that's on a level of creativity that is like instantly, brilliantly recognizable, and yet I never would have thought of it. If that makes sense, you know what I mean? Like when I heard the nickname, I was like, "Oh, I get it," but I wouldn't have been smart enough to think of that nickname myself. So I think, whereas like tugboat, there's a chance that I would have run into thinking of a nickname that good. The password, I don't think I'm clever enough to think of that. So I think I'm going with the password.
There you have it.
Is that
There we
good?
have it.
Are we all good with that?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
listen, folks, you might be arguing with our picks, and you are fully within your rights to
Yeah.
do so. I mean, if I had been doing this yesterday, I might have voted for Tugboat. So you have your opportunity.
Yeah.
Nickname knockout, like we said,
Yeah.
runs through noon Eastern time on May 29th. So you still have more than a week to vote. More than a week to debate with yourself of who
Yeah.
would you choose at
Yeah.
each matchup. Spend your time with it. But tell your friends and email in, podcast at milb.com. Tell us where we got wrong, who we left behind in the dust,
Yeah.
who should have moved on a few more rounds.
Please.
Uh,
Please
but I'm
do.
really excited to see what the results of this are going to be,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it'll tell us plenty about what the minor league audience uh, values in a nickname. Is it something like the password and Tugboat, which are short and concise, or is it the Iowa meat truck, which is a little bit more of a mouthful, but is
But it's
completely
so
out of left
good.
field?
It's
Yeah.
so good. Oh man. You too can vote at MLB.com, MILB.com. Minor league nicknames are on the table as the nickname knockout bracket is here for 2026. Congratulations to the password, Justinson Garcia, for his at least the show before the show title for nickname knockout here in 2026. Matt Wilkinson, the Tugboat, the legend himself, and a guy who I actually got to call games for in the World Baseball Classic back in March. Tugboat, I'm sorry that we didn't pull you through, but hey, being a runner-up, nothing wrong with being a. You still got so many bright days ahead of you in your career, Matt Wilkinson. But for Vancouver fans, for Canadian fans, try to get your boy through. You can vote right now at milb.com. All right, we talked with Ben about his trips to Asheville and Chattanooga, and we're headed back to the Lookouts here this week. Ben, what do we got?
As I mentioned earlier, I was just visiting Erlanger Park, the new home of the Chattanooga Lookouts, and I'm going to talk to the team's owner, Jason Fryer, about what went into building this ballpark. Because as I said, it's a really unique location, and a lot of thoughtful decisions had to be made, and want to learn all about it. So here's Jason Fryer, the owner of the Chattanooga Lookouts. I'm here today with Jason Fryer, the owner of the Chattanooga Lookouts, who have a new ballpark this season, Erlanger Park, and the CEO of Hardball Capital. Just want to learn more about this ballpark. I was just visiting last week, and who better to talk to than a man who was behind the scenes with a lot of the planning of this new ballpark. So, Jason, thanks for being here.
Yep. Glad you had a chance to visit. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so before we get into the Lookouts' new ballpark, give us the background on, your involvement with the Lookouts in terms of becoming owner of the team, and what was attractive to you about the Lookouts.
Yeah, we bought the team back in 2015. So we've owned it for about 11 years now. We closed right before the season, just about a month before the season in 2015. So had a little bit of a sprint to the first year there. But really what attracted me to Chattanooga was the market. Chattanooga just is it is a growing and thriving place. They've got a nice downtown. Um, the downtown is expanding. I think there's just a lot of positive energy around Chattanooga. I think that's probably even more the case now than when we bought the team. Um, I had been up there several times previously. I live in Atlanta. I'm only about an hour and 45 minutes from Chattanooga. So I've been there a few times over the years. When the team first came on the market, we took a look at it. The asking price, given the then current state of the team in the old ballpark, was higher than we were interested in paying. So we just sort of let it be. And a year or so later, circled back with it. And at that point, we're able to strike a deal.
Nice. So that is a little over 10 years ago at this point. And going into it, I assume in your mind, knowing that it was going to take a long time, but was building a new ballpark, pretty much a primary item on the checklist as soon as you got involved with the team in terms of at least starting that slow and laborious process?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we looked at this, a couple of different things. From the team perspective, we knew that the existing ballpark was subpar. It was one of the last ballparks built what I'll call sort of the old way, which is you put up a bunch of bleachers and then have concession stands under them and things like that. That was the same sort of situation we inherited when we bought the team in Fort Wayne back in 2006. Um, so we knew the ballpark itself was subpar, and that our interest in the team was really because we thought a new ballpark was something um, that would work there and that was needed there. From a city perspective, one of the things we realized pretty early on, and this was part of our diligence in deciding whether or not to purchase the team, was that the city had a few areas around town that were really thriving and a few other areas that were still struggling, and where they needed something to give that area sort of a kickstart. So we thought that there was at least one, potentially multiple places where building a ballpark as part of a mixed-use development, again, like we've done in Fort Wayne, like we've done in Columbia, would be a great benefit for the community itself. So for us, sort of both those things have to be true, right? It has to be something where this is what makes sense for the team, but it also has to make sense for the community, because we can't sell people something that isn't going to benefit them.
And so you said, you had potentially multiple options in terms of where a new ballpark could be located. What led to settling in the area that you did build the new ballpark, Erlanger Park, former industrial area, an ironworks foundry, with its own industrial past? It's, an evocative setting, but what led you to that eventually?
Yeah, I mean, it was actually the very first place we visited when we were thinking about buying the team in terms of looking at a place. This is a very strategic site for Chattanooga. It is literally the front door to the city if you're coming in from the west. So if you're coming in from Nashville, Birmingham, Huntsville, any place like that on I-24, this is what you see right before you get into downtown. So it became apparent to us from the beginning that this was a site that, since the industry that had been there that you referenced had closed down, the city, the county, were trying to find something to do with this. The area had been described to us in various ways, as the downtown got much nicer and this sort of decaying industrial site was still at the front door. People said it was sort of like you built a nice new house and left a truck out on blocks in the front. Somebody else described to me as Chattanooga's missing front teeth. So we sort of knew from the start this was probably the place. That being said, back in 2015, we took the then city and county mayors up to see our ballpark project in Fort Wayne. And they met with the mayor of Fort Wayne at the time. They met with some city council people. They met with the three largest businesses in town. And I think came back impressed that this had been a very good thing, not just for our team, but for the Fort Wayne market. And so, that was August of 15. We scheduled a meeting then in the fall of 15 with each mayor independently. And we said to them before this, we said, where do you think this should go? And they said, well, you look around, your business, you look around and you tell us where it should go. You give us some options and we'll talk. And so we went to see each the city and the county mayor independently, and we rolled out, a big map, and we had 4 or 5 places where there was enough space to do something like this and where you could make a case that it might make sense. And for each of them, as soon as we unrolled the map and they saw this as one of the highlighted areas, they both immediately pointed and said there. So this was not a close call. It was where we were thinking all along. And each of the mayors independently didn't even want to talk about the other sites once they thought about the idea of doing this on what's called the old Wheel and Foundry and U.S. Pipe site.
Yeah, the old Wheel and Foundry and U.S. Pipe site.
So it was actually 2 sites, right? One of the sites was Wheel and Foundry, and the other was U.S. Pipe, which manufactured pipes and valves and hydrants and fittings and things like that. So it made sense to have the foundry and the manufacturing near each other. But they were actually two separate, they worked together with 2 separately owned businesses, and those sites were purchased independently by the same set of partners back in the early 2000s and then combined.
Okay, gotcha. And then, so once you have decided on that site, I mean, there's the question of kind of tear everything down and it's a blank slate for building a new ballpark, or incorporating the structures already existing in that area and incorporating the history of the area into the ballpark. Obviously, you went the latter route. I think it makes it a much more memorable setting, but I'm sure that brings up a lot of challenges as well in terms as opposed to just starting fresh. But what made you decide to go to that route to really highlight the industrial past and incorporate a lot of those pre-existing structures?
I think it makes the place special. It makes it unique. It makes it something that resonates with people locally. It gives it an authenticity, that you can't get just by building something from scratch. That being said, as you say, it's a lot more complicated. In Columbia, where we built a new ballpark, on that site, as part of the site, there have been, I think, 8 historic buildings that have been retained and repurposed in some or another fashion. One into apartments, one into a restaurant, a couple of them into creative office space. But when we looked at trying to incorporate any of those buildings into the ballpark itself, things just got very complicated, and we started to say, we ended up saying was, it would take us at least an extra year. We'd have to push the opening back at least a year in order to really figure out how to do that. And even then, there wasn't a guarantee that we could find exactly the right way to do that. On the other hand, here in Chattanooga, I think the buildings were a little bit more friendly, but we also, we have as a master development partner, a group that has really specialized in retaining, reusing, adapting historic buildings. So, the expertise that they brought both directly themselves and in terms of some, adaptive reuse, specialized architects they brought to the table to help us with this, really what enabled us to be able to go that route.
And what was the name of that partner that you worked with?
So our master development partner
Yeah.
is called New City Properties. They're out of here in Atlanta. And they have experience with everything from something called Ponce City Market here in Atlanta, which was an old Sears Roebuck distribution center that is now, I think, the most visited tourist attraction in Atlanta. It's restaurants, shops, a food hall, offices, all of that along Atlanta's Beltline. They've also done this project called the Newhoff Project up in Nashville. It's in Germantown. It actually, from in that development, you can actually look out and see the Nashville Sounds ballpark. But they retained an old meat packing plant and some other old structures there as part of that development. So this is something that they specialize in and they know how to do. And they brought in a company called S9 Architecture. That was not the primary architect for the ballpark, but that was there specifically to help us figure out how to incorporate these old buildings. And S9 had done Ponce City Market, Newhoff with New City, but they'd also done things like Chelsea Market in New York. They're a New York-based firm. So, they know how to work with these historic structures in a way that most architects don't.
Yeah, Chelsea Market, former home of the Major League Baseball advanced media offices for a lot of years. So then to go into a little detail on a few of these structures that are incorporated into the ballpark. I mean, perhaps the one that stands out the most is the powerhouse out in right field, and incorporating a lot of the original bricks and original architecture. How did that come about? What was the vision for the powerhouse? Because that's a big part of the ballpark experience.
Yeah, well, the goal was very much to save as much as we could, to incorporate as much as we could. The powerhouse is just a really cool old building. It was built in 1882. It was the first building on the site. It's what provided power to everything else that was going on the site. And it faces right out onto the Tennessee Riverwalk, which runs right by our ballpark. So it made a ton of sense to save it. The issue we had initially was that if we wanted to use the pattern shop as well, which is this other building that we're using, which is a much larger building, and we wanted to bring the field relatively close to the pattern shop, we had to do some things to the powerhouse, meaning that the powerhouse would actually have been, part of it would have been on the field. And it also would have been, even if we moved the field a little bit further away, it would have been blocking, a big part of it would have been blocking the view of the field from the pattern shop. So it would have made the pattern shop harder to use. So what we actually did is, we kept, let's call it 3/4 of that pattern of the powerhouse building, but we cut it open at an angle, and the angle was determined by what we needed to do to be able to give view angles from people who are on the deck at the pattern shop. So we cut it open, which is great for a few reasons. It means we both have indoor and outdoor space for fans who are in there, and it also gives you sort of this unique angle onto the field. By cutting it open at that angle, you're looking out right down at home plate and things like that in a way you wouldn't be if the building was still all closed up. But in terms of sort of inspiration for this, I think probably the closest thing we had seen was the Western Metals building back out in left field in San Diego. They've got that old building and have found ways to incorporate that into the ballpark. It's actually, unlike lots of places where you have old buildings you can see from the ballpark, or that serve as an entry or something like this, the Western Metals building is actually something people can sit or stand in and watch the game. And that's really what we were trying to do with the powerhouse.
Yeah, and then you mentioned the pattern shop. Those buildings are, right next to each other on the first base side and right field. What's the story behind the pattern shop in terms of why you gave it that name and its history? And that building seems like it has a lot going on inside it, a large structure.
Yeah, so we didn't give it the name. That's what it was called. It was called the Pattern Shop.
So yeah,
what they did was that is the building in which they stored all the old patterns for the pipe valve hydrant manufacturing that was done on site. So what they did is they had these wooden patterns into which they would pour the molten metal in order to form these parts. So I guess once they would, I think a lot of these they would have to custom make for somebody's order, but then they wouldn't want to throw it out in case the people wanted more. So every time they would build a new part, they needed to create this new pattern. And at the end of the day, they had stored hundreds and hundreds of patterns in this building. The building is, give or take 300 feet long. So it's almost a football field long. As you said, we've got a lot going on in it. We knew we really wanted to reuse it. It's a cool building. We also knew we couldn't get the field sort of right up to it without destroying the powerhouse. So what we decided to do is we decided to build a large deck that connected the pattern shop to the field. And what that does is, it brings the two together and connects them. That deck also serves to cover the concourse below, and it allows us to create a really cool group area out of the second floor of the pattern shop, one that has, interior conditioned space, and then also this big exterior deck with some baseball seats coming down from it. And so the second floor of that pattern shop is a really cool area. It's over 17,700 square feet of uninterrupted space. Because there's a steel truss roof, there's not even a single column in that space. So it's very, very flexible. We can subdivide it in all sorts of ways. We built movable walls that are on wheels, and we've decorated them with the old patterns that used to be stored in there. So we've tried to preserve more of the history than just the building itself. But it allows us to use it as a group area for as many as 5, 6 different groups at once. It also allows us to use it for all sorts of off-day events. And then the ground floor of the pattern shop holds the team offices and a food hall.
yeah, and the food hall is a unique element because it's not enclosed. It's open air, but it's underneath the larger structure and a lot of options there. And then the team store is nearby. I understand there was an interesting approach to putting the team store in that location. If you could go into that a little bit.
Yeah, so we knew where we needed the team store, right? You need the team store by one of your main entrances, and this right field corner by the powerhouse was viewed as our primary entrance. We did not want to turn the powerhouse into a team store. We thought that there was going to be better uses for that. So the place to put the team store was across on the other side of the concourse from the team store, from the powerhouse. And what's on the other side, though, is this enormous building they called the Shed. It was the old foundry building. It is multiple football fields long. It still has in it these old cranes, but it is an enormous structure. and making that structure habitable, even making a small portion of that structure habitable, was going to be close to impossible, certainly economically infeasible, and the amount of time it would take, we would have been open for years before we had a team store, right? So again, New City, the folks that we are working with who are master developing the site came up with a very clever idea, which was to build a self-contained building and sort of just slide it into this giant, larger building. So the building was built by basically a manufactured housing company that's a little less than an hour away in Cleveland, Tennessee, called Wind River. Wind River does things like tiny homes and stuff like that. But they were able to build our team store. They brought it down in 4 different pieces, and then were able to put those pieces together by sliding them all into this larger building. And they had to work around, giant columns and things like that. So when I say the store came in pieces, one piece was slid in. They put some rails down on the ground and actually slid it in on rails. And then they brought in these other pieces that attached around them and had, areas carved out so that it wouldn't interfere with these giant posts that were holding up the larger building. If you go on Instagram, you can actually see the main piece of it getting slid in. Once they had everything ready, and clearly, it took months and months to get everything ready, and even days to install these rails. But once they had everything ready and this piece on site, they put it on the rails, got a tractor there to push it, and they pushed it in about a minute and a half.
Wow, after all that, just boom.
Yeah, just slid right in.
Interesting. And then, as a backdrop, you have the actual Lookout Mountain, which I was told that a Lookouts team never played in view of the Lookout Mountain before. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, I mean, the Lookouts had primarily played at 2 places before Erlanger Park. They were at Old Engel Stadium for something close to, let's call it, 75 years. Engel Stadium is pretty far from Lookout Mountain. It's actually, oddly enough, it's right over by our naming rights partner, Erlanger. But it's meaningfully further away than even our current ballpark is from the mountain. Or not our current, but the ballpark that we were in when we bought the team. And then the ballpark that we were in when we bought the team, AT&T Field, did not have any views of the mountain either. We were down by sort of the bend in the Tennessee River, by the aquarium, and at the very sort of north end of downtown. Lookout Mountain is south of downtown. So yeah, this is the first time you can actually watch a Lookouts game in view of Lookout Mountain.
Yeah. And then just to wrap everything up, I mean, obviously the ballpark has now been open just for a little more than a month, but how do you see this area developing over the next, year, 3 years, 5 years? Because like with most new ballparks, it's a work in progress even well after the ballpark itself opens.
Yeah, similar to Columbia, it's an enormous site. There's over 100 developable acres around the ballpark. 100 acres doesn't develop overnight. To give you an idea, people talk about the Battery. The Battery is like 56 acres, I think. So, and obviously, the Braves were able to do the Battery all at once, which is amazing. But they were able to do that because they're owned by a $30 billion public company, and because they were building in Atlanta, a city of 6 million plus people. So you can absorb $1 billion of development over the course of a year. In places that we've been, like Columbia, where we're also part of a very large development. Columbia is 181 acres. Even if you had the financing to develop this all at once, the market just couldn't absorb all of that. If you suddenly threw 500, 700, 1,000 new apartments on the market, it would crater the market in these towns. You can't build 4 office buildings and expect them to all be full right away. So this is definitely something that will happen over time, but we're already seeing just so much interest, and we think that phase 1 of the private development will kick off yet this summer. The very first thing that we done will be about 300 units of luxury apartments. I think relatively shortly thereafter, they'll start an office building next to that. I think at the same time, you'll start to see some of these other historic buildings reused. There are a couple of smaller buildings that I think will end up being restaurants or microbreweries or things like this. And then that large shed building, the same way we had our team store slid in there, I think our master development partner is thinking that they can put many other of these sort of self-contained buildings inside that. So our hope would be to see that start to develop as well.
Awesome. Well, it'll be interesting to see how this all comes together. But yeah, early returns, I mean, seem great to me in terms of just a fun place to watch a game. So congratulations on getting it together, and thanks for taking the time to speak with me.
Thanks. Good speaking with you.
Yeah. All right. That was Jason Fryer, owner of the Chattanooga Lookout, CEO of Hardball Capital, which also owns and operates the Columbia Fireflies and Fort Wayne Tin Caps.
Saying goodbye for this week's episode of the show before the show. We rambled so much getting to the password, winning our first ever nickname knockout, that we're going to bounce our on-field chatter from this week's segment, and you can get updated. We don't have like a ton of new late breaking stuff on prospect promotions. Obviously, Colt Emerson up with the Seattle Mariners, but Sam's got a great piece up on the site right now, which is about the early breakout prospects, the all breakout prospect team, which you can read at MLB.com. And that's the on-field stuff. So before we get out of here, it is time for this week's edition of Name That Dude, in which one of us grabs a baseball dude's name from years past and the other two try to guess it. Benjamin Hill will be the dude knower this week. Sam Dykstra and I shall try to guess this dude. Ben, take it away.
Yeah, this is a dude who played for a very long time. And as is often happening with this segment, I'm like, have we done this dude before? Have we done this before? So stop me as I go on if you think this is one we've already done before. But this is a dude, again, played in baseball for a very long time. It all started, he was a California guy, standout in freshman school, and he was drafted in the first round by the New York Yankees in 1978. And then he started a long career in the minor league system. In that 1978 season, he's still just 17 years old. The Oneonta Yankees in the New York Penn League. Next year goes to the Florida State League, spends the whole season with the Fort Lauderdale Yankees. 1980, again with Fort Lauderdale, as well as with Greensboro Hornets in the Sally League, Class A Sally League. 81, back in Fort Lauderdale again for most of the season. The entirety of the season, actually. 1982, more time in Fort Lauderdale, 9 more games. He's only 21 years old, but he's spent a lot of time with the Fort Lauderdale Yankees at this point, and also plays in Double A for the Nashville Sounds when they were a Double A team in 1982. In 1983, most of the season with Fort Lauderdale, but also some time in Triple A with the Columbus Clippers. He's still in the Yankees. 84, almost the entire season with the Columbus Clippers, AAA, makes his major league debut at the age of 23 with the Yankees, gets into 9 games. 1985, same story, mostly in AAA Columbus, a little bit of time with the New York Yankees. Then he moves over to the Baltimore organization. Spends most of 1986 with the AAA Red Wings, but does appear in a handful of games with the Baltimore Orioles. 87, the entirety of the season, he must have been injured, did not play much. Back in AAA in the Baltimore organization with the Red Wings. Now he goes to the Montreal organization, and he plays alongside legendary Razor Shines with the Indianapolis Indians in the American Association AAA, and he does play in a lot of games, about half the season for the Expos that year in 88. 89 is first, finally, at age 28, his first full season in the minor leagues with the Expos. 1990 starts it with the Expos, but then spends most of the season in St. Louis, where he was also played in 91 and 92. Then goes to Japan for the 1993 season with the Tyler, you would know this, the Yakult. What is it?
The Swallows, the Tokyo
Swallows.
Yakult Swallows. Yakult is
Yeah.
that company that makes like yogurt drinks. Random.
Yes. So he plays 1 season in Japan in 93, then comes back to the States in 1994 at the age of 33 and plays the first of 3 seasons with the then California Angels, 1994, 95, 96. Then goes to the Philadelphia organization and plays all through the Phillies minor league system in 97 and also a good chunk of time with the Phillies, a little bit more time with the Phillies in 98 before he wraps up his career in AAA with the Cleveland Indians. He played in Buffalo. So he was drafted in 78. His final season was 1998. He was a position player. For all those, he spent parts of 13 seasons in the major leagues with, again, the Yankees, Orioles, Expos, Cardinals, Angels, and Phillies.
Man, this one's tough.
And is a recognizable name, but was often a bench player, a bit player. His 13 seasons in the majors, yes, he was as I said, a position player. Was a utility guy, played in the infield as well as the outfield. You can see him at second base and shortstop. See him in the outfield, mostly in left field. Um, so just stuck around, played more games in the minors during his career, 963, than he did in the majors, 774. It was a speedy guy, 107 stolen bases in that relatively short major league career, at least in terms of games played, not in terms of his length.
Man, this is a
And
tough one.
For some reason,
he went on
Go ahead.
to be a broadcaster, and he is known in the broadcasting world and just sort of an upbeat baseball personality.
Huh. Um,
He was nicknamed the Bug Eater during his time in St. Louis because he picked an enormous, this is from Wikipedia, he picked an enormous June bug off his cap, and his teammate Tom Pagnazzi dared him to eat it.
I definitely saw this on like a baseball bloopers tape.
He was offered $800 collectively by his teammates and ate this bug.
Oh,
Then he
called a
spent a
big
long
June bug
time.
while we were driving. Not really hungry.
Yeah.
Um,
And he spent time as color guy for the Angels for quite a lot of years, from
um,
99 through 2009.
oh man, this is gonna drive me nuts. Um,
And also has calls games for the Royals, or does color commentary for the Royals.
um,
I'm completely blanking.
man, yeah, this is gonna drive me insane. Because I feel like there's somebody out there who I'm like, oh, I know this, like I know this person's the maybe the name is not on the tip of my tongue, but like I have an idea
The
of
Wonder
who.
Dog.
Ah, Rex Hudler. It's Rex Hudler. Rex Hudler. The Wonder Dog. I knew that. That one I knew. It's a great nickname, by the way. Yeah, Rex Hudler. What's funny is like I would not, if you told me name all of the teams that Rex Hudler played for, I would not have gotten hardly any of those. Like I vaguely remember, I mean, granted, he debuted before I was born, but like I sort of remember Rex Hudler. I remember him as an Angel. But I don't like if you would have asked me now, I would have been like, oh yeah, Rex Hudler, Royals legend, because he's done broadcast for them for so long, but he never actually played for the Royals.
Yeah, that's a funny one. He played all over the place for
Yeah,
2 decades, but was actually never on the Royals.
that is interesting.
Um,
And he's not from that area. He was born in Arizona. He grew up in California. Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
yeah, I mean, he did play for the
He's
Angels.
fun.
Yeah, upbeat guy. I
Yeah,
mean, I was a
he's one of those
huge
guys
Phillies
who like
fan, but
you always
I
hear what
remember.
just a nice guy Rex Hudler is. And yeah, I was gonna say, do you have like any Phillies memories? It was a short stint for him, 75 games between
Not
two
really,
seasons.
but I loved those late 90s Phillies teams. I went to games during that season all the time. And once I saw it there, I was like, oh yeah. But no. And I've tried to kind of stay away from picking predominant Phillies because I feel that's where my mind always goes when it comes to
Yeah,
name that dude. Then I was like, so I came up with Rex first, and then I was like, oh, he was on the Phillies, but that was incidental. Um,
yeah. It's not
Oh,
like when you
this
think
is
back on his career, you're not like, oh yeah, Phillies legend Rex Hudler.
yeah, exactly.
this is because he followed a broadcaster from the Angels to the Royals.
Oh, okay, okay, I gotcha. Interesting,
So
huh?
there you go.
Rex Hudler he's a fun guy to listen to. He's a guy who loves baseball, and those are our types of guys. So Rex Hudler, wherever you are today, I don't know where the Royals are today, but wherever you are today, Rex Hudler, we wish you all of the best as this week's dude on Name That Dude. The Royals, it appears, are at home against the Red Sox tonight, 7:40 Eastern time. They will take on the Bostonians. But that was a good one for Name That Dude for this week's episode of the Show Before the Show. And that's going to do it. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us. We always have so much fun whenever we get to do our goofy brackets and we get to, and sort of just nerd out on our love of this game. And if you have any thoughts on maybe nicknames that we didn't include that we should, maybe we're not even aware of as of yet, or nicknames that you thought should have made it a little bit further along, podcast at MILB.com. And for Benjamin Hill and Sam Dykstra and Rex Hudler, wherever he is, my name is Tyler Maughan. Thanks for hanging out with us on the Show Before the Show. We'll catch you next week.